Bueno, bienvenidas y bienvenidos a el webinar sobre la comunicación no violenta como habilidad del siglo XXI. Este es un webinar que estamos haciendo entre Comunicación Plena y el SIMNIT Institute, que después el doctor Bedavias nos va a pronunciar todo el nombre completo, para mí es difícil. Y bueno, muy contenta de estar acá. Yo creo que es un tema bastante interesante, pues para mí personalmente, y lo quería compartir con ustedes. Y bueno, algunos saben, algunos no. Comunicación Plena es un proyecto que yo tengo en Colombia, donde enseñamos comunicación no violenta a público en general. Estamos en un colegio con estudiantes de 11 grado, algunas estudiantes están acá, que me alegra mucho. Y me interesó mucho invitar a Bedavias porque él nos va a hablar sobre la comunicación no violenta desde ese enfoque de Gandhi y otros enfoques, ¿no? Como normalmente yo trabajo con comunicación no violenta de Marshall Rosenberg y él nos va a ampliar esa mirada. Para los que no me conocen, soy Claudia Sánchez, también colombiana. Y Kushi va a estar con nosotros y nosotras traduciendo, interpretando. Va a ser una interpretación consecutiva, ¿sí? Entonces primero Bedavias va a hablar, van a ver que las diapositivas van a estar en inglés y después en español, y Kushi va a interpretar. Y lo que vamos a hacer es que las preguntas van a estar al final y pueden, porque se les van ocurriendo cosas, dejarlas en el chat y nosotros después vamos a agarrar esas preguntas y las vamos a responder, porque eso nos facilita la interpretación y poder como gestionar el tema de los dos idiomas. Entonces, les dejo con Bedavias. Él está aprendiendo español, lo cual para mí es un regalo que vaya a hablar algunas cosas en español. Entonces, para mí es como muy lindo ese esfuerzo de que nos va a hablar en nuestro idioma algunas cosas, y bueno, y después con interpretación. Así, y muchas gracias por estar acá a todas y todos los participantes, y I'll leave it to you, Bedavias.
Hola a todos y todas. Agradezco a la Claudia por facilitar este programa sobre la comunicación no violenta como una habilidad del siglo XXI. Me siento honorado por haber tenido esta oportunidad de hablar sobre este importante tema con todos. También agradezco a todo el público presente y a mi profesora de español, la señorita Kushi Nigam, por haberme introducido en el español. Ya va a traducir nuestra presentación de hoy. Para empezar, permítanme presentar mi organización. Gandhi Smriti and Darshan Samiti es un organismo autónomo del Ministerio de Cultura del Gobierno de la India, presidido por el honorable primer ministro. Gandhi Smriti es el lugar sagrado donde el Mahatma de la Paz cayó ante las balas de los asesinos. Gandhi Smriti es el lugar donde el Mahatma permaneció los últimos 144 días de su vida. Nuestro otro campus, Gandhi Darshan, alberga una de las mayores exposiciones fotográficas sobre Mahatma Gandhi. El objetivo general de la Samiti es llevar la vida y el mensaje del Mahatma a todos los sectores de la sociedad, tanto a nivel nacional como internacional. La Samiti organiza diferentes programas innovadores que incluyen programas de campo, eventos, conferencias, talleres, programas de formación, programas de desarrollo de habilidades, iniciativas académicas y de investigación. El enfoque se centra en diferentes dimensiones de la filosofía del Mahatma y sus valores y principios humanistas que contribuyen a una cultura de paz. La promoción de la comunicación y la resolución no violentas son nuestros programas estrella. Hemos llevado a cabo estos programas para promover la comunicación no violenta y la resolución no violenta de conflictos tanto en la India como a nivel internacional. Well, now I will be speaking in English. I hope I made some sense with my introduction of my organization. I'm sure next time I interact, I will be more quote unquote perfect in what I speak in Spanish. Well, friends, good evening from India. Good evening from myself and my teacher in Spanish, Khushi. Let us start this quick journey on why nonviolent communication is indeed a 21st century skill that we all need to nurture. Khushi.
Miss Claudia, can you start presenting the presentation?
Well, friends, well, at a time across the world, we find a situation where there are so much of conflicts, so much of hate speech, so much of narratives of hatred. In fact, so much so that United Nations Secretary General in 2019 launched the UN strategy and plan of action to combat hate speech. Also, there are so much of issues related to the narratives of hatred and intolerance and racism and xenophobia, not just in different communities across the world, but also in the digital space. In that context, it is all the more important as we are in this 21st century that how we can nurture an important and healthy and a communication ecosystem, which is nurturing healthy communication, which promotes mutual coexistence, harmony, and love and compassion, and contributes towards a culture of peace. Yeah, Khushi.
Okay, thank you so much. Para empezar, hola a todos y todas. Gracias por esta oportunidad. Estoy muy contenta de estar aquí porque me gusta la Colombia y sobre todo la música colombiana. En India amamos mucho a Shakira. Como dijo el señor Veda, me llamo Khushi, soy estudiante de la Universidad de Delhi, en India, y hablo un poco de español, aunque todavía estoy aprendiendo. Voy a traducir la presentación de hoy. Si tienen alguna pregunta, escríbanla en el chat. También le pido a señora Sánchez que las traduzca al inglés al final para tener una interacción más precisa. La ruptura de las relaciones, la cultura altamente individualista y materialista y la inherente falta de cohesión social reflejan las tensiones de la sociedad moderna. Para negociar estas complejidades y contribuir a una coexistencia armoniosa, los jóvenes y de hecho todos los ciudadanos necesitan adquirir diferentes conjuntos de habilidades del siglo XXI. Como la comunicación es una parte integral de todas nuestras relaciones y interacciones sociales, el desarrollo de nuestras capacidades comunicativas es fundamental. En este sentido, es importante que los individuos desarrollen un ecosistema de comunicación saludable. Y para la evolución de un ecosistema de comunicación saludable, el objetivo necesita ser practicar la comunicación no violenta como parte de nuestros hábitos diarios. En Gandhi Smriti, aquí en India, creemos en la paz gandhiana, lo que significa que la ahimsa o la no violencia y la satyagraha o la lucha por la verdad sin usar la fuerza como las armas o librar batallas son esenciales. Como dijo Gandhi, el mundo vibra en paz solo cuando los individuos que viven en esto transformen su mente para lograrlo. El odio y la paz, los dos comienzan con nuestras palabras y nosotros mismos. En el día de hoy, el OG del campo de la psicología, de los terapeutas y de los consejeros demuestra lo poderoso que puede ser el discurso humano para cambiar nuestras actitudes y nuestras mentes. Así, un discurso suave y no violento puede cambiar el mundo. And that is what Sir was talking about. So we can move on.
Well, friends, also what is important to understand is that communities across the world, we find a situation when we are all moving towards a situation of extreme materialism, and there seems to be a great increase in the whole culture of individualism. And when this whole culture of individualism is accentuated by collapse of communities, in fact, there is this beautiful book by Robert Putnam who talks about this collapse of the communities. In that context, we find in many situations, and occasions, there are so much of individuals' psychological insecurity and dysfunctional relationships, which actually this also propels the desire to race towards materialism. In fact, in all probability, an individual who rushes towards the acquisition of these materialistic goals will further find themselves in, the whirlpool of insecurities that could lead to further aggravation of the whole situation, especially in the context of the community, in context of the families, in the context of course, the individual sense. And hence, the important aspect is that how our communication needs to be more secured, more needs to be a situation where our communication architecture needs to be, in sync with the harmonious coexistence and underlining the essence of humanism. As we go into that, let us go into the first slide. We start with this beautiful, profound quote, which I was talking to you about, the whole conflicts in the situation, in the societies across the world, and also conflicts that are there within. That is also something which really creates problem. In that context, we have Mahatma Gandhi, who says the world will live in peace only when the individuals composing it make up their minds to do so.
Okay, I'll read that. El mundo vivirá en paz solo cuando los individuos que viven en este transformen su mente para lograrlo. Mahatma Gandhi.
Next, please. While we are talking about the individual action, we are talking of individual action vis-a-vis the contribution towards a culture of peace, there is this very important statement by UNESCO, which says that peace should not be taken for granted. It is an ongoing process, a long-term goal, which requires constant engineering vigilance, and active participation by all individuals. It is a choice to be made on each situation and everyday life decision to engage in sincere dialogue with other individuals and communities, whether they live a block or a click away. Here in this context, I want to underline, friends, on the importance of dialogue, importance of active participation by all individuals, and importance of engagement with each other so that we can all contribute towards a culture of peace. Khushi.
Ok, muchas gracias. En el mundo materialista de hoy, el individuo que corre hacia el materialismo se encontrará atrapado, se alejará de lo que más importa, la familia, el amor y la comunidad. Por ello, necesitamos una comunicación más segura que nos ayude no solo a vivir juntos, sino también a decirnos. Como resume la UNESCO, la paz es un proceso continuo, es el resultado de nuestras interacciones, nuestras palabras y la intención que manifiestan. We can continue.
Yes. Also, no, in fact, I would request that if we can keep this slide straight there, I want to also explain an important aspect to it. When we are talking of equal participation, the active participation, when we are talking of engagement, when we are talking of sincere dialogue, friends, in that context, when we are talking of that communication architecture, communication ecosystem, that should actually lead to this individual and society's well-being, our communication architecture. And also our communication ecosystem should actually lead to an expansion of social capital and social cohesion and ensure enhancement of pro-social behavior in the society. Because if we are not able to construct a healthy ecosystem and expansion of social capital and social cohesion, we can't promote global solidarity. In fact, as we are in this pandemic period, but of course, the positive things in the pandemic period is that we are able to have this interaction together. But of course, the important need as part of this pandemic period is the importance of global human solidarity. And that is possible only when we have a cohesive and healthy communication ecosystem. And that's what we nurture amongst ourselves and also try to see how it can be nurtured for the society at large. Yes, please, Khushi.
Ok. Dije que la participación y el compromiso igualitarios en un ecosistema de comunicación pueden llevar al individuo a desarrollar un comportamiento prosocial en la sociedad. Este ecosistema depende de todos nuestros comportamientos. Durante COVID-19, nos hemos dado cuenta de la importancia de la solidaridad humana que solo es posible a través de una comunicación sana. We can continue, sir.
Yes, please. So Claudia, can we go to the next slide, please? In fact, when we are talking of the 21st century skills, you see, when we are talking of 21st century skills, there are so many important aspects to it. Now, how we can promote media literacy, how we can promote financial literacy, eco-literacy, cultural literacy, so many important dimensions to the skills that we need to acquire to be able to contribute towards a culture of peace, to be able to be a 21st century citizen. Friends, there was this Dallas report of 1996, which was produced by the International Commission on Education for 21st Century, the UNESCO, and it was talking about the important aspects of the 21st century skills that we need to nurture, that is learning to know, learning to do, learning to be, and learning to live together. Underlining point for each one of them. They are all very important. Yes, please.
Ok. A medida que el mundo cambia en el siglo XXI, a medida que estamos más interconectados, a medida que las nuevas generaciones están constantemente expuestas a la tecnología, la Comisión de Lores en 1996 desarrolló una comprensión básica de las habilidades que son importantes para desarrollar en este tiempo. Se trata de aprender a conocer, aprender a hacer y aprender a vivir juntos, lo que en última instancia conducirá a la paz y a la armonía. We can continue.
Yes, please. Next slide, please. Well, you see, the WHO, the World Health Organization, has also enumerated some of the life skills that are needed for the 21st century. And that are, again, very important. The decision-making and the problem-solving skills, the creative thinking and critical thinking abilities, communication and interpersonal skills, self-awareness and empathy, coping with emotions and coping with stress. You see, in the 21st century now, as we explained and we discussed on how it leads to collapse of communities because of the increasing materialism. There are also issues when we are talking of the stress factor, the issues of emotions, how we can handle emotions, the issues of emotional intelligence, the issues of critical thinking and problem solving skills that we need to have, the social intelligence skills that we need to have, the emotional intelligence skills that we need to have. These are very, very important aspects of 21st century life skills that we all need to nurture so that we are able to engage in the deep dialogue which UNESCO was talking about, and active participation in the not just in the family life, but at the societal level and of course at the global level, because we are all now are global citizens. Yes, please.
Okay. La Organización Mundial de la Salud prescribe algunas habilidades para la vida para el siglo XXI, que son, primero, toma de decisiones y resolución de problemas. Este comportamiento nos ayuda a llegar a mejores conclusiones en nuestras vidas cotidianas. Entonces, tenemos el pensamiento creativo y crítico, que nos ayuda a pensar de forma innovadora. Entonces, hay la comunicación y las habilidades interpersonales y intrapersonales, los dos. Tenemos también la autoconciencia y la empatía. En el libro El Principito de Antoine de Saint-Exupéry, el autor afirma: es mucho más difícil juzgarse a uno mismo que juzgar a los demás. Si consigues juzgarte a ti mismo correctamente, entonces eres un humano verdaderamente sabio. Así, el conocimiento de uno mismo y la empatía con los demás nos hacen mejores seres humanos. Y por último, hablamos de cómo afrontar las emociones y el estrés, cómo el mundo cambia y nos enfrentamos a caos, aprender a manejar las emociones y encontrar la verdadera felicidad para nosotros mismos debe ser nuestro principal objetivo. We can continue, sir.
Yes, please. So when we are talking about these issues, also in fact, we have already talked about those WHO's perspectives on the 21st century. We have talked about the UNESCO's perspective, the learning to live together, and basically now we talk about some of these very important survival skills. Let us reflect how important these skills are for our well-being, how important these skills are for we as individuals to contribute towards a good society, a society which has importance of social cohesion, and how important is skills like critical thinking and problem solving, how important is collaboration and leadership. In fact, when we take these classes on leadership, we talk of transformative leadership, how we can develop leadership which actually transforms human relationships, how we can promote initiatives and entrepreneurship, how we can promote effective oral and written communications, and the whole idea of media and information literacy. You see, media and information literacy again becomes extremely critical in the 21st century skill, because we are all, bombarded with so much of information, and we have so many platforms like the social media, and so on and so forth, where we can construct our own messages. And we are always communicating, except possibly when we are not sleeping, we are actually communicating. Even in the bedside, we will be, communicating with someone. And the whole issue, as here we are talking of accessing and analyzing information, it is beyond that when we are talking of construction of messages. Each one of us are constructing messages. And we are also living, as we can all realize, in a world where they call it as a WhatsApp university. Like in the morning hour, we get, and we will get flooded with so much of information. And also, if you see go to the social media, the Facebook and so on and so forth, there will be so much of nasty comments. People are getting trolled. In fact, for your information, with two friends in Spain, we have put together one very interesting study on the use of how the Twitter, how women are trolled in Twitter. And of course, that is in Spanish, because both of my friends, both are professors there in Spain. And we are doing this deep study on this whole issue of women and being trolled in the Twitter. So you can see so much of negativity surround. So in that context, the ability to analyze information critically, ability to construct information, messages, communication messages properly, which is healthy, is so very important. Yes, please.
Ok. El señor Kundu habla del liderazgo transformador y de cómo hay que cambiar las nociones tradicionales de liderazgo y hacerlas más empáticas. Los medios sociales también son una fuente de infelicidad en el siglo XXI. Es importante construir nuestros mensajes en las plataformas de medios sociales de una manera más responsable. La inundación de información debida a Internet, el ciberacoso, la misoginia, el trolling y el abuso de mujeres y niños en Internet siguen siendo un gran problema en nuestra época. Esta negatividad requiere la capacidad de utilizar la comunicación de forma adecuada. Y aquí hablamos de las habilidades que necesitan los estudiantes para prosperar en el siglo XXI. En primer lugar, es importante inculcar el pensamiento crítico y la capacidad de resolver problemas en la vida personal, profesional y familiar. Después, hay que aprender el arte de la colaboración y el liderazgo, y de la agilidad y la adaptabilidad a nuevas situaciones y circunstancias. En un mundo que fomenta más que nunca la expresión creativa, los estudiantes y los jóvenes también pueden participar en la iniciación y el emprendimiento de nuevas ideas de tolerancia y paz en Colombia, en la India y en todo el mundo. Es igualmente importante tener una comunicación oral y escrita eficaz. A menudo no son las palabras que utilizamos, sino la entonación que empleamos lo que decide si nuestro discurso es grosero o empático. Así, las palabras y el tono que elegimos durante la comunicación pueden cambiar cualquier discurso. También necesitamos aprender a utilizar Internet en toda su capacidad, atendiendo a la información y analizándola. Esto nos ayuda a combatir el discurso de odio, la misoginia, la xenofobia, etc. Y por último, debemos aprender a alimentar al niño que llevamos dentro Es importante tener la curiosidad y la imaginación de un niño y la capacidad de mirar el mundo con asombro y alegría. Yes, we can continue, Miss Gloria.
Yes. So we have already talked to it. We can go to the next slide, please. We have already discussed this. Well, in this here now we just talk about what is nonviolent communication in the context of what we have discussed so far. It is so very important to understand what is nonviolent communication, and this very senior Gandhian from India, he gives a very brilliant explanation of what is nonviolent communication when he's talking about, you know, the importance of how our ability to communicate not only with ourselves but with our family and the society should be non-violent in all aspects. And in fact, he says that the entire process of communication, whether it is between individuals, groups, communities, and the world at large, should be non-violent in nature. In fact, Nakwa Thakurji talks that you see, it not just entails verbal communication or non-verbal communication. Non-violent communication also entails the use, communication that is from within, that is at the intrapersonal level, that is our thoughts, our ideas should also be non-violent in nature. In fact, he's talking about, when we are talking of non-violent communication as a 21st century skill, he says that he underlines the importance of non-violent communication literacy. That means basically critical understanding of the non-violent nature of our communication and how we can use these tools of non-violent communication to reach out to the others. That means he's underlining the essence of humanistic approach to communication. Yes, please.
Okay, I'll translate that. Aquí hablamos del veterano gandiano, Natwar Thakur, que nos ofrece una comprensión detallada de la comunicación no violenta. Él señala, para mí, la alfabetización en comunicación no violenta mostraría cómo nuestros esfuerzos de comunicación se han convertido en no violentos y cómo nuestra habilidad y capacidad para comunicarnos con nosotros mismos, con nuestras familias y la sociedad en general es no violenta en todos los aspectos. Significa que el proceso general de comunicación entre individuos, grupos, comunidades y el mundo necesita ser de naturaleza no violenta. Esto implicaría una profunda comprensión del arte y la ciencia de la no violencia y su importancia en todas nuestras acciones cotidianas. No se trata solo de la comunicación verbal y no verbal. La alfabetización en comunicación no violenta incluiría también si nuestros pensamientos y ideas son violentos o no. La comunicación no violenta implica la humanización de nuestro proceso de comunicación. Esto también significa cómo podemos deshacernos de nuestras nociones preconcebidas de los individuos o grupos con los que queremos comunicarnos y dejar de evaluarlos para que se adapten a nuestras propias ideas. Más que a menudo estamos acostumbrados a pensar en términos de juicios moralistas que pueden ser nuestras propias construcciones. Si desarrollamos una comprensión profunda del arte y la ciencia de la no violencia y la integramos en nuestras prácticas de comunicación, podremos superar los juicios sesgados y moralistas. Esto, a su vez, podría contribuir a la construcción de puentes emocionales. We can continue, Miss Gloria.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, please. I think we have already covered this. We can go there.
Yes,
next slide.
We can move on from the speech part.
Yes. So basically now what we are going to do is we are trying to understand the different elements of non-violent communication, and that is very important as we are trying to assimilate why as we need to nurture and practice nonviolent communication. In fact, at this stage, let me point out that when we are talking of nonviolent communication, there is no such formula that we can have A plus B equals to C and we become nonviolent communicator. It needs deep practice. It needs utmost sincerity on our part to essentially practice nonviolent communication in our daily lives, whether it is with ourselves, but also not just with ourselves, but also with the world. Only then we can contribute to the whole culture of peace. And I remember as the Venerable Thich Nhat Hanh, who just passed away almost 15 days back, he had talked about peace within ourselves, peace in the world. And in that context, the communication that we are doing has to have our inner communication also needs to be at peace, and also the outer communication. In that context, let us try to explore what are the important elements of nonviolent communication. That is basically the first one is complete lack of violence in the way we communicate, whether it is verbal, non-verbal, our thoughts and perspectives. Because remember, our thoughts and perspectives are the primary form of communication. The next important aspect is the understanding of the self and the constructive self-talk and inner dialogue. You see, it's so very important in today's world as we are, so greatly stressed in many ways in different societies across the world. There seems to be a turmoil within, and what is important here is that how our inner communication becomes stable and harmonious. Because if our inner communication is not harmonious, if it is not peaceful, then it gets reflected in our outer communication. What happens is that when we are talking of self-talk, like there is so much of negativities within ourselves in today's world. And because of these negativities, our inner communication also gets affected. So what is important is that we have to work on how our self-talk and inner dialogue. Inner dialogue means probably say I'm wanting to talk to my teacher Khushi, and I am very angry with her that she has not given she has failed to give me proper lessons which I could do, and I found it very difficult. I will talk to her, imagined interaction with her, the imagined dialogue with her. My teacher, she is not giving me time to, do my work properly, and I'm not able to catch up with Spanish. So that is the imagined dialogue. So how our imagined dialogue, constructive self-talk and inner dialogue becomes stable and harmonious is something we need to nurture. Also, what we need to do as an element of nonviolent communication is deep faith in the principles of humanism and human values. So if you could kindly tell these 3 points, then we go to the next slide.
Okay, all right. Okay. Comienza citando a Thich Nhat Hanh, un famoso filósofo budista, que dijo que la paz dentro de nosotros mismos es la paz dentro del mundo. Hay una historia budista. It's like this. Cuando era joven, quiere cambiar el mundo. Cuando no puede hacerlo, entonces quise cambiar mi país. Cuando no puede hacerlo, entonces quise cambiar mi pueblo. Y me di cuenta de que si me hubiera cambiado a mí mismo, podría haber influido para que mi familia, mi comunidad y mi país cambiaran. Hablamos aquí de las partes esenciales de la comunicación holística y saludable. La comunicación no violenta significa la ausencia total de violencia en la forma en que nos comunicamos con los demás. Esta comunicación puede incluir la comunicación verbal, como nuestro discurso en el mundo físico y virtual, las comunicaciones no verbales, como nuestro lenguaje corporal, los gestos, las expresiones y nuestros pensamientos y perspectivas personales. Es igualmente importante aprender a entenderse a sí mismo y a hablar de forma constructiva con uno mismo y con el diálogo interior. A menudo nuestras palabras están influidas por nuestras ideas y nociones. Una autocomunicación dañina, la autocrítica y la baja autoestima pueden corromper nuestra visión del mundo. El cambio empieza por nosotros mismos. Por último, debemos alimentar una profunda fe en los principios del humanismo y los valores humanos. Tanto Colombia como la India tienen algo en común, la cultura de la paz que celebramos a través de la música, la danza y el arte. En ambos países, los padres enseñan a sus hijos a vivir colectivamente en las comunidades, a inculcar el respeto por la naturaleza y a valorar la paz y la tolerancia. Así como adultos, debemos seguir dando primacía a las ideas de humanismo, amor y paz. We can continue, Ms. Gloria.
Thank you. Thank you. The other important elements of nonviolent communication. I request you to kindly, reflect and self-reflect on all these points, all these elements, and try to see when we nurtured these as part of our daily lives, the difference it makes, the transformation it brings in our lives, transformation it brings in our, relationships, the transformation it brings in the society at large. So here it is, the use of appropriate and positive language. You see, just some time back, if all of us remember, the Archbishop Desmond Tutu passed away. Archbishop Desmond Tutu talked about that language is very powerful. And the words that we use, we need to be responsible for use of those words. So that is something very important we need to remember. It also, how we heal a relationship, how we strengthen a relationship depends on the word and the language that we are using. If we are using inappropriate language or a language which is not positive enough, then it becomes a problematic thing. It actually then can actually destroy a relationship. Words has the power to either heal a relationship or destroy a relationship. So that is so very important. Then expansion of our emotional vocabulary. Because sometimes what happens is that we are not able to express our feelings. And when we are not able to express our feelings, then it becomes a problem. Like there could be a problem of conflict. And there could be a problem where we are not able to understand the other person. So expansion of emotional vocabulary, emotional intelligence is extremely important 21st century skill that we need to nurture. Then what is the problem? The issue, the next important element is avoidance of stereotypes, friends. Many of us get bogged down, get entrapped on the issue of stereotyping. We are all from different cultures, communities, race, identities, etc., etc. And when we get entrapped into this whole idea of stereotyping, then there is a possibility that there is a possibility of a dysfunctional communication ecosystem. So how we can get over? I will explain to you. Like for instance, in many parts of our world, especially like we find even in India, like say for instance, we are walking in the road and our pockets are picked, and then there are some street children around. The first thing we will say, here, these must be the people who must have picked our pocket. Stereotyping. Or say many parts of the world, we have stereotyping vis-a-vis disability. So then the problem, the communication, there is a breakdown in communication. Then importance of empathy, extremely important. I remember when the former American president, Mr. Barack Obama, once he said that there seems to be empathy deficit in the world. Definitely there is empathy deficit in the world. How we put ourselves into the shoes of the others and try to understand the other person's point of view, extremely important. How we can connect with the other person through empathetic skills. That's something we need to learn. We need to expand our skills of empathy, important. And the importance of compassion. You see, these are all altruistic tendencies: empathy, compassion, gratitude, kindness, compassion. How we can understand the sufferings of the others. When we are able to understand the sufferings of the other, then we will be able to handle many of these conflicts that comes around in a better way. Then expression of gratitude, that whole habit of thanking people of who might have done something or the other for you. And also, of course, kindness. If you see empathy, compassion, gratitude, kindness, these are actually altruistic tendencies. And all these altruistic tendencies, these are not just philosophical terms, these are actually linked to the psychology. You see, these are linked to the neurosciences of the brain. The more we express gratitude, the more we express or we are more compassionate, then it actually, a lot of psychological studies have been done, and they say that that leads to our well-being, that leads to a situation. These are like stress busters. These are like stress busters, and they actually lead to avoidance of stress. We become stress. There is less of stress when we are actually practicing these altruistic tendencies. And when we are talking of the whole communication process, it actually leads to a transformation of relationship. It leads to a transformation of our approach and a transformation of dialogues, even if there are differences of opinion. These are very important altruistic tendencies we need to look at. Then, of course, flexibility and openness in our communication. Friends, what happens is that when there is a conflict, say for instance, I have a conflict with my teacher, and I am, again, absolutely clear that what I am thinking is correct and what she is thinking is not wrong, is wrong, sorry. And there is a communication breakdown. But to again start the process of communication, if I am more flexible, if I'm more open, then the communication starts. So much of the problem happens is that we get into that whole notion of ego, that if there is a problem with her, then I will stand on my own ego and I will not reach out to the other person. Probably, if you realize many times, such when you are having a difference of opinion or conflict with someone, that actually happens. But if we can nurture this whole trait of flexibility and openness, then even if there is a differences of opinion, we are able to communicate, at least talk for some time to resolve our differences. That is so very important. Yes, please.
Ok, vale. El señor está dando muchos ejemplos de conflicto conmigo como su profesora de español. Vale, el señor habló del arzobispo Tutu, que hizo hincapié en la comunicación holística. Las palabras tienen el poder de curar o destruir una relación. Para una comunicación sana, también es importante utilizar un lenguaje apropiado y positivo en nuestros entornos. Esto puede incluir cumplidos por un buen trabajo, respeto por los que trabajan por debajo de ti e incluso una simple sonrisa y reconocimiento cuando ves a la gente. La segunda es la ampliación de nuestro vocabulario emocional. Esto nos ayudará a expresar nuestros propios sentimientos y a comprender mejor a los demás. Evitar los estereotipos es otra característica esencial de la CNV. Por ejemplo, si nos roban el bolsillo, pensamos que deben ser los mendigos quienes lo han hecho. Tenemos que acabar con esos pensamientos. En una época de globalización en la que conviven personas de diferentes religiones, identidades y nacionalidades, debemos evitar los estereotipos. Cada individuo, incluidos ustedes y yo, es único. Todos y todas tenemos nuestro propio lugar en el mundo. Y todos podemos aportar algo que nadie más puede. A continuación, hablamos del poder de la empatía. Barack Obama dijo que hay un déficit de empatía en el mundo y como humanos el cambio es constante en nuestras vidas. Pasamos por momentos buenos y malos. Esto en sí mismo es la vida. Por ello, necesitamos comprender el sufrimiento de los demás para que cuando nos enfrentemos a momentos difíciles, también podamos ser tratados con amabilidad. Entonces, también es necesario aprender la importancia de la compasión. Desde tiempos inmemoriales, figuras como Jesucristo, Buda, Gandhi, Martin Luther King han hablado de la compasión. Creo que incluso en comunicación plena, la compasión es una idea central. Por lo tanto, aprender la importancia de la compasión a través de nuestras acciones, nuestras palabras y nuestras mentalidades puede realmente cambiar el mundo y extinguir los conflictos. Tenemos que aprender a amar a nuestro prójimo como a nosotros mismos. Y por último, es muy importante la expresión de la gratitud en nuestra vida cotidiana, especialmente hacia las personas que cocinan para nosotros, limpian después de nosotros, conducen nuestros autobuses y taxis, enseñan a nosotros jóvenes, etc. También debemos ser flexibles y abiertos en nuestra comunicación. Debemos aprender a apreciar las cosas buenas y a pedir suavemente si se cambian las cosas que no nos satisfacen. Lo esencial es comunicar nuestros sentimientos, especialmente nuestro enfado, de forma que no perjudique a nadie, ni siquiera a nosotros mismos. El abuso y la grosería solo pueden engendrar más abuso y caos. Por ello, debemos esforzarnos por ser pacíficos en nuestras palabras. We can move on, Ms. Gloria.
And the last few elements of nonviolent communication is the connecting with the needs of others. Friends, it's again an extremely important skill that we need to learn. I will give you an important example, interesting example. I was some time back, I was conducting this whole workshop for judicial officers here in India. And there were this litigation, one of the judges, she said that there was a litigation going on between a brother and a sister. And the honorable judge said that she wanted to, try to see if there could be some mediation in that case. So she invited that particular lady to her chamber. And when she started talking to that lady, she felt that probably the conflict started from a very micro level. She was older than her brother, and she thought probably the brother and the sister-in-law did not have adequate respect for her. You see, many times conflict starts from a very micro level. And what happens is that we are not able to understand why that particular person is behaving in a particular manner. And because we are basically dealing at a very superficial level. But what happens is that when we are trying to unearth, when we are trying to look at beneath the surface, we will realize that why that particular person might be behaving in a particular way. So when we connect with the needs of others, when we have developed that skill of connecting with the needs of others, what was that need of that particular person because of which she or he is behaving in that way, much of the conflict actually we are able to resolve in a more constructive way. Then active and deep listening skills. In fact, in most part of our culture, we have been conducting workshops here in almost all continents like Africa and Asia, in different countries of Asia, Europe. And in many of those universities and schools, they feel that many of us have lost the skill of listening. We don't want to listen to each other deeply. That is something we need to nurture. Then avoidance of moralistic judgment, judgmental communication. In fact, one of the important person in the West who has promoted the whole idea of nonviolent communication, Dr. Marshall Rosenberg. Dr. Rosenberg talks about like judgmental communication is essentially life alienating. We jump into judgments. Something has happened. If someone has done something to us, we will jump into judgment. Hey, you are totally useless. You can't do anything, even without thinking. And that actually is demotivating. And actually, this is, whether we say, for instance, if again, I'm going back to my teacher, if I'm not able to do well, and my teacher will say that, yes, you're not going to pick up Spanish ever. And that is a judgmental communication, and I will get demotivated. So that is the way things are. We can't demotivate people, and moralistic judgment is something like that. Similar is the case of negative evaluative language in a classroom situation. Think of a situation if our friend Claudia is a coach of the school football team, and her wards are not able to score a goal at all. And she will say, hey, you can't ever score a goal. You are totally useless. You need to be dumped out of the team. And demotivation. So negative evaluation is again a problematic thing. So both these things are actually something which are demotivating. And the more we nurture, the more we practice avoidance of these kind of communication, then we are able to connect with the others. The whole idea when we are talking of nonviolent communication is a harmonious coexistence, the humanistic approach to our communication process, so we can overcome these with these ideas. Yes, please.
Ok. Aquí el señor cita un caso en el Tribunal Supremo de la India, en el que una hermana demandó a su hermano. El juez se reunió a solas con la hermana y ambos se dieron cuenta con el paso del tiempo de que este enorme conflicto era en realidad el resultado de algo muy minúsculo. Y así muchos de nuestros conflictos son el resultado de pequeños malentendidos. Para remediar esto, la comunicación no violenta es la quintesencia. Utiliza un ejemplo de conflicto conmigo una otra vez. Y aquí terminamos con las habilidades de comunicación no violenta. Abordamos la importancia de conectar con las necesidades de los demás y de entender que puede ayudar a los demás a mejorar su situación. También hablamos de escuchar activa y profundamente. Escuchar es un arte, es naturaleza terapéutica. El mayor problema de la comunicación es que no escuchamos para entender, escuchamos para responder. Por lo tanto, dominar el arte de escuchar es dominar el arte de comprender a nuestros seres queridos y así resolver los problemas de una manera más empática. También es importante evitar los juicios moralistas y por último, evitar el lenguaje evaluativo negativo es parte indispensable de una comunicación holística. Debemos valorar las opiniones e ideas de todos y abstenernos de juzgar a los demás. Es fácil juzgar, es más difícil comprender. La comprensión requiere compasión, paciencia y la voluntad de creer que los buenos corazones a veces eligen métodos pobres. Al juzgar, nos separamos, con la comprensión crecemos. And I have translated that. I think we can continue.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Gracias. Well, as we come towards the end of this whole session, let me share with you this beautiful quote of Dr. Albert Schweitzer. I've always been inspired by Albert Schweitzer, and he says that just as the wave cannot exist for itself, but must participate in the swell of the ocean, so we can take our experience, our lives by ourselves, but must always share the experiencing of life that takes place all around us. The ethics of reverence of life requires that all of us somehow and in some way, something shall act as men towards other men. So importance of reverence for life. What is important is that when we are talking of nonviolent communication, we must nurture this whole idea of reverence for life, the whole idea of mutual respect. And quickly, as I say, we see when we are talking of nonviolent communication, the pillars of nonviolent communication, I say, are the very basic pillars of what we say the Gandhian nonviolence. The importance of mutual respect, because when we are respecting each other, then of course there is in majority of the cases the chances are the other person will also respect us. So mutual respect leads to greater understanding of each other's position. We are all human beings, you see, we are all different, we have all different point of views. So in that context, when we are saying when we have deep respect for each other, respect leads to greater understanding of each other's position, and greater understanding of each other's position leads to greater acceptance of each other's position. You see, when there is a conflict, we sometimes again stand steadfastly that what I am saying is correct, what the other person is saying is wrong. So but when we have when we have greater understanding of each other's position, it's so much easier to accept each other's point of view. And then when it leads to that, what we also need to nurture is positive appreciation. Because friends, in today's world, we are all into this all negative quagmire of so much of negativity around us. But can we nurture, can we go and see the window outside, from the window outside, the beautiful flowers? Can we appreciate that? Can we appreciate some of the positive things that are happening around us? If the positive things that we appreciate outweighs the negativities that are there, then our communication becomes more positive in nature. And of course, compassion, we have already discussed. So these are important points and lessons that we need to nurture and learn. Yes, please. As we go to the next.
Ok. Nos gustaría concluir con la siguiente cita por Albert Schweitzer. Al igual que la ola no puede existir por sí misma, sino que siempre debe participar en el oleaje del océano, así nunca podemos experimentar nuestra vida por nosotros mismos, sino que siempre debemos compartir la experiencia de la vida que tiene lugar a nuestro alrededor. La ética de la reverencia por la vida requiere que todos nosotros actuemos como hombres y mujeres hacia otros humanos. Además, el señor Kundu habla de los pilares del gandhismo. Los 5 pilares fundamentales de la no violencia de Mahatma son respeto, comprensión, aceptación, aprecio y compasión, y pueden considerarse la arquitectura básica de un ecosistema de comunicación no violenta. El modelo gandhiano de comunicación implica la evolución del individuo hacia un nivel superior de valores y ética y el respeto a la dignidad humana. Su modelo de comunicación hace hincapié en la importancia de ser moralmente disciplinado y adherirse estrictamente a los principios de ahimsa y verdad. El nieto de Mahatma Gandhi, Arun Gandhi, en su libro El don de la ira, desarrolla estos 5 pilares fundamentales de la no violencia gandhiana, y podemos decir que son precisamente los pilares de la comunicación no violenta. Todos estos aspectos son esenciales para que nuestro ecosistema de comunicación sea armonioso, y hacia que nos dediquemos a la comunicación intrapersonal, interpersonal, de grupo o de masas. Yes, I think that is it. I have translated this, and gracias por recibirnos. Y espero que mi pronunciación no es muy malo.
Súper bien, Kushi.
Oh, muchas gracias.
Gracias, gracias. So we come to the end of this whole thing, and that's, you see, communication, essentially, we must realize that it is actually the fulcrum of our individual's social skill. And so without adequate, communicative capabilities, it would be difficult to maintain and strengthen the social ties. And in that context, we want to ensure that how we can promote this and nurture non-violent communication for social cohesion and harmonious coexistence. Because as I pointed out earlier, the ill effects of unhealthy communication in the context of contemporary materialistic and individualistic societies, and with so much of hate speech around, the narratives of hatred, racism, and xenophobia, it becomes all the more important that we practice nonviolent communication, and as a counter narrative to the narratives of hatred. That is what I feel, and that is what we need to do. A number of people in many of these workshops, they ask me, like, especially in the context of the digital space, what can we do when there is so much of hatred in the social media? I say that possibly we can develop a whole army. I was doing this workshop for Cameroon Women Peace Builders Network, and we felt that there needs to be an army of non-violent communicators in the digital space who can be a counter narrative to all these hate narratives. I think that is the thing that we need to do. Now I think we can open for possible discussions and interactions.
And Kushi, could you interpret that last part before we go to the questions?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, just give me a second. Okay. So el señor habla del odio que exista en el espacio digital. Bajo el anonimato, la gente se arriesga a decir cosas que nunca diría en la vida real. Y así las narrativas de odio pueden erosionarse a través de la comunicación no violenta. Yes, I think we can continue.
Perfecto. Entonces, lo que vamos a hacer para que nos ayude con la interpretación es que si tienen alguna pregunta o comentario que quieran hacerle a Bedavias, las podemos responder. Entonces, les voy a dejar como unos segunditos para que las piensen. Si tienen preguntas o comentarios, las ponen en el chat y vamos respondiendo. So, Bedavias, I'm just giving a little time for people to reflect and
absolutely
and have the questions if they have some.
I was seeing some points in the chat box. I don't know,
but they are not yet questions. More, there was a comment of Sandra that she says that she reflects that at least for her, peace starts, peace or hate starts with her, right? And then Anna was asking about the name of the Arun, and now we replied that, and Mercedes.
There are some questions, I think they're coming. Yes, from Anna, no? What can we do when we talk to a person who is very angry and cannot stop talking in a violent way? Well, I think what we can do is basically when we are actually, you see, generally what happens is that when we are not in the habit of practicing nonviolent communication, then there is every possibility of our us reacting in a very aggressive manner. But when we are a practitioner of nonviolent communication, even when someone is angry with me, I will not react in the same way. I will react with a greater, respect. I will try to build with that particular person who might be angry with me, and try to talk to him or her in some way so that the other person, possibly that softens that person's anger. That is what is so very important, because if we are again aggressive, then the person becomes more aggressive, and then the whole conflict starts. As I said, conflicts can be triggered from a very micro issue. So how, when we are practitioners of nonviolent communication, when we are empathetic, because there is, if we can connect to the need of that particular person who is angry with me, possibly it is because of some needs of her or his which is not met. Because of that, that person is possibly behaving in that particular manner. So if we are able to unearth, if we are able to go beneath the surface, then possibly we will have our reaction to that particular issue can be totally different, and we will be able to, what we say, that emotional bridge building. Non-violent communication is essentially leads to emotional bridge building. If either Khushi or Claudia can translate into Spanish what I said, possibly.
Miss Claudia, would you like to try? Because I was trying to respond to the other person's question.
Sí, voy a hacer el mejor intento. Lo que yo entendí es que no, que si alguien está muy enojado, ¿no? Como nosotros, como que se nos pega la emoción del otro, que no se nos pegue esa agresividad, ¿no? Como estar internamente con una emoción de pronto un poco más tranquila y no como volvernos espejo de esa violencia del otro. Y tratar como de hablar, ¿no? Como de pronto no replicar eso que la persona está haciendo, sino, por ejemplo, está hablando violentamente, que nosotros no hablemos violentamente. Y esto no fue lo que dijo Veravias, pero a mí se me venía como la imagen de Gandhi, ¿no? Como no te voy a responder con violencia tu violencia, ¿no? Creo que eso es.
Perfect. I believe there were some questions. ¿Cuál es la razón de elegir la comunicación no violenta en relación a otros tipos de comunicación? If someone could tell in English, please. I can get it, but still not understanding
there is also
it.
a question by Mercedes. Yeah.
So yeah, like what she's asking, well, she's delighted with the presentation, and she wants to ask you if you can do it, if there is like comparison in general between Colombia and India of how we share the practice of nonviolent communication in the society. Maybe you can talk from your perspective in India, and we can talk what we do in Colombia.
Okay. So in fact, we are actually trying to promote the whole idea of nonviolent communication from Gandhi Smriti and Darshan Samiti. And in fact, we are running this very interesting course, very introductory course on nonviolent communication, which is an online one. And of course, there is a 6-month certificate course, but that online course that has been translated in many languages, including international languages like Kyrgyz and Swahili in African. And our teacher Khushi is now translating it into French. Someday it could be translated into Spanish too. You see, when we are talking of nonviolent communication, it depends from culture to culture. And as I said, much of the problem that is there because of this increasing, issues of stress, increasing issues of materialism, possibly that art of communication is missing in many societies. What we need to do is ignite that non-violence amongst us. I remember reading this beautiful research by UNESCO. They had done this whole study in 1988. They brought scientists across the world together, scientists and philosophers, and they were trying to delve on the important point of violence, whether violence is inherent or non-violent, whether we as human being, when we are born, whether we are violent or we are non-violent in nature. And the scientists and the philosophers came to the conclusion that we are not inherently violent in nature. It is external conditions which make us violent. So in the context of communication also, that is very true. It is the external communication, external environment that we are living in, that situation that we are in, we become violent and our communication becomes violent or aggressive. So in that context, it is a challenge for each one of us, whether it is India or Colombia or Kenya or any country, that how we can contribute towards a culture of peace by adopting these cultures of non-violent communication. This has to be a global movement, I suppose, for that.
I can try to translate that.
Yes, please.
Okay. El señor dice que impartimos un curso certificado en línea sobre comunicación no violenta, y sí, en India, aquí en India. Hoy en día tenemos muchos problemas de comunicación debido al materialismo y al individualismo, por lo que el arte de la comunicación se ha perdido en muchos lugares, en India, en Kenia, en Colombia. Un estudio de la UNESCO de 1988 reunió a científicos y filósofos para debatir si la violencia es innata o no. Y la conclusión fue que las condiciones y los entornos externos nos hacen ser violentos, y por tanto un entorno no violento puede cambiar nuestro mundo. Quiero añadir algo. Por ejemplo, en la India creemos en la ahimsa, es decir, la no violencia. Como somos de Gandhi Smriti, donde creemos en los principios gandhianos, creemos que cualquier conflicto, incluso físico, puede resolverse con suavidad. Por ejemplo, en 1930, los gobernantes coloniales británicos arrestaron a Gandhi por crear caos y rebelión en India, pero en el tribunal tuvieron que dejarlo libre. No había pruebas de violencia, ya que ningún indio había levantado la mano contra los británicos, así que ¿cómo podían arrestar a un líder que nunca dirigió una guerra contra las autoridades coloniales? Por lo tanto, esta idea me conmueve mucho. Se trata de enfocar una situación que es irritante de una manera en la que se actúa como un factor de difusión. That's how I think the non-violent communication is in India. And yes, I hope it's clear.
Gracias, Kushi, maravillas. Y pues lo que puedo compartir acá en Colombia es que, bueno, nosotros con Comunicación Plena llevamos casi 3 años como compartiendo la comunicación no violenta, y ahí nosotros nos enfocamos mucho en la comunicación no violenta según Marshall Rosenberg, y también por eso fue muy interesante para mí invitar a Vedavias y a Kushi para empezar a ampliar, ¿no?, otras miradas de la comunicación no violenta. Y compartimos al principio, cuando yo regresé al país, no había mucho, ¿no? Y hacíamos un montón de webinars como lo que estamos haciendo para que al menos se conozca, ¿no?, qué es eso de la comunicación no violenta, porque ni de nombre, ¿no?, como que no sabíamos mucho qué era. y compartimos a público general, cuando antes de COVID presencial, ahora muchos de los programas también son online. Estamos trabajando en un colegio con estudiantes de 11 grado, donde tanto sus papás como los docentes participan en este programa, que es más o menos 8 meses, y además pueden acceder a una beca de estudios universitarios, al menos uno de los estudiantes. Y también hay otras personas acá en Colombia que comparten la comunicación no violenta, por ejemplo, en la unidad de búsqueda de personas dadas por desaparecidos. Hay organizaciones del Estado donde se ha empezado a hablar, ¿no?, de comunicación no violenta para que los funcionarios, ¿no?, al menos sepan qué es. Se está hablando de transformación de los conflictos, ¿no?, que cuando hay un conflicto nos transforma, ¿no?, como que a veces le tenemos mucho miedo al conflicto. Y también en comunicación plena hacemos mediación porque a veces es difícil y necesitamos un tercero que al menos nos ayude a escucharnos, que era lo que hablaba de Davies, ¿no?, que hemos perdido esta habilidad de escuchar, y más como lo que decía Ana María, ¿no?, qué pasa cuando mi percepción es que estoy recibiendo mucha violencia de otro, ¿no? Entonces, ¿cómo podemos como corregularnos y ayudar a que el conflicto sea transformador y no absolutamente peligroso como a veces lo vivimos acá en Colombia? Eso creo que es lo que compartiría hoy. ¿Quieres, Kushi, seguir con la siguiente pregunta o traducírsela? A ver, Avi, es la de ¿cuál es la razón de elegir la comunicación no violenta en relación a otros tipos de comunicación? That is, what will be the reason, Veravias, to choose nonviolent communication instead of other types of communication? What will be the reason to choose that one?
Acha. But basically, they want to ask why we need to choose non-violent communication, isn't it? Okay. You see, what happens is that think of the last time you had a fight with your friend. Possibly, what were the effects? Say number one, you must have got really stressed out. B, there were a lot of turmoil within you, because when you are trying to go back to your bed, and try to reflect why you were angry with your friend, why you had a fight with your friend. So you must have had a really turmoil within yourself. So A, stress. Second, turmoil within yourself. Third, actually, it is something which is against your well-being and your happiness. You're not happy when you are fighting with someone. So these are 3-4 important significant points, which actually leads to a situation when we are not using, when we are using unhealthy communication, we get into a situation when we are not happy. It is going against our well-being or happiness. In many parts, you see, I and Kushi, we are from New Delhi, which is one of the most, especially in the winters, it is really one of the most polluted cities in the world, possibly. You see, when we are also, for instance, probably if Claudia has taken a food which is rotten, then what happens? There is a food poisoning, or there could be a problem of digestion. So the food that we take needs to be healthy. Similarly, the air that we breathe in, both of us, I and Kushi, we complain of that really nauseating atmosphere of pollution, so much of pollution. And and also for many people, it leads to a lot of respiratory diseases. So the food that we take, or the air that we breathe in, that needs to be healthy and pure. So if we take unhealthy food, or if you're taking unhealthy air that we are as part of our breathing in, that really leads to trouble. Similarly, is communication. So healthy communication leads to a healthy lifestyle. Healthy communication leads to we can avoid stress. Healthy communication leads to a strengthening of relationship. Unhealthy communication, on the other hand, leads to a problematic relationship. It leads to stress factor, lot of health problems. Many of us will have a lot of issues of anger management. We will, a lot of issues of BP and so on and so forth. So let us practice nonviolent communication to remain healthy, and actually it leads to our well-being. That is the real fund we gain by using, nurturing nonviolent communication. Yes, please, Khushi, if you could kindly.
Okay, just give me a second. Okay, esta pregunta es muy buena. El señor está diciendo que la última vez que te peleaste con tu familia, probablemente hubo 3 resultados. A, estabas triste por dentro. B, sufriste estrés. O C, tu salud mental se resintió. Por lo tanto, estas situaciones son comunes cuando utilizamos una comunicación poco saludable. Siendo de Nueva Delhi, que está muy contaminada durante los inviernos, nos quejamos del aire nauseabundo. La gente sufre, no puede respirar, los niños pequeños tienen que llevar mascarillas, las escuelas cierran debido a la calidad del aire. Esto es similar a la comunicación. Una comunicación sana puede ayudarnos a vivir una vida sostenible y saludable sin problemas. Contribuye a nuestro bienestar. And yes, that's what Vedas said.
Thank you. Gracias.
And I don't see more questions, just a comment of Valeria, that she's saying that it's excellent to talk about the tone of voice when you are saying something, because that depends on how people interpret what you are saying. And Valeria is one of the students of the school, so I'm very proud of her comment.
Okay, wonderful, great. Fine.
Bueno, entonces yo creo que vamos llegando al cierre. Quiero agradecerle profundamente al doctor Vedavias por haber compartido con nosotros, por haber hablado primero en español, por todo este conocimiento. La verdad, yo personalmente estoy muy inspirada y con una como ampliación, ¿no? de qué es esto de la comunicación no violenta. También te quiero agradecer mucho, Khushi, por tu interpretación. Todo para mí fue muy claro y además tu voz ayudaba mucho como a enfocarnos. Entonces, muchas gracias a todos y todas las participantes. Muchas gracias por acompañarnos. Va a haber la grabación que la vamos a subir en el canal de YouTube, tanto de Comunicación Plena como del Instituto en India. Y yo quería cerrar con que, bueno, en Colombia empieza un curso esta semana online de comunicación no violenta, y vamos a hacer una actividad presencial en La Calera el 26 de febrero, también un día de naturaleza y pasar día en el campo y aprender de comunicación no violenta. Y también lo dejo a Khushi para que recuerde las actividades que hace el instituto, y te dejo que tú cierres, bueno, que traduzcas a Vedavias y cierre.
Muchas gracias por su atención. Ha sido una experiencia maravillosa para mí y para el Dr. Veda. You can call him Dr. Veda because Vedavias is a bit complicated. And,
no, simple Veda will be fine. You see?
Yes, I think Claudia, she was a little confused in the beginning. So I just call him Veda sir. So yes. El público fue increíble, de verdad, y lamento los errores de mi pronunciación. Todavía estoy aprendiendo y espero que un día el señor Veda y yo lo hablemos correctamente. Y gracias por recibirnos. Buenas noches desde India.
Muchas gracias.
Gracias. So possibly the next